my vision, every desire. Keep for your glory, my soul inspired. With your perfection and your holy love, flooding my pathway with light from above. And fill all my vision, Savior divine, till with your glory my spirit shall shine. And fill all my vision, that all may see your holy image reflected in me, reflected in me.
Good evening, good late evening, everybody out there in podcast land. This is Jason Goodson
and Johnny Taylor,
and this is Coffee and Conversations. It's Wednesday night, 10:29 p.m., July 23rd, and we are 3 weeks back into this, and I'm looking forward to it every week. I think there's just a renewed sense of wanting to come in and discuss how all this is laid out and what God has given us to do. And it just really excites me to, just to do this again. I love this format and I love what God's doing through it.
Yep.
And
you may have to excuse me this week. My brain is fried from last week and it may wander all over the place. So,
well,
I don't know if I'm going to be coherent or not.
Well,
and we may get in trouble if we follow what we were talking about a while ago.
Well, well, I can tell you this: I'm ready for the normalcy of fall to get back into the swing of things. I'm enjoying the summer right now. Today we had. I went out and mowed my lawn early this morning. I knew we had visitors coming, but I never saw the visitors arrive and show up.
Yeah.
And so Kathy had gotten things prepared, and I'm, in the middle of mowing. I'm usually listening to a podcast or I'm listening to some sort of sermon or music or whatever it is I'm doing while I'm mowing. And I come in the house after mowing and I'm sitting at the counter and kids are playing, things are going on. And I look down and there's this kid here that it's not mine. And so in the midst of having 5 kids, sometimes you don't realize there's extra kids in the house and everything. So two of Zoe's friends came over and hung out with Lucy, and of course they all played together, and it was a fun time and everything. So I was a little oblivious to the fact that we had extra people in the house, and so
it can be dangerous.
It could be real dangerous. I mean, you could come in, steal something, and I wouldn't even know it at sometimes because there's so much going on. But it's a good going on. It's a good thing. We love having our 5 kids and everything. So one of the things I wanted to start off with, JT, before we get too far into our conversation, is I want to talk about our Twitter account.
Yes.
Real fast. And to those of you who are following us at the moment, I want to get a retweet campaign going for our podcast, because what I would like, and this is mostly flesh coming out in me right now, but I would really like to see how far we could spread this out and let, and have people listen in and respond. And it's always interesting to see who pops up and listens to the podcast down the road. But really, because what we do here is simple. We just having a conversation about God, about our life, and how Christ is manifest in that. And, which is basically our subject tonight, is just what's going on the inside and what's bubbling in on the inside. And And sometimes that goes into the masses of nowhere. There are awkward pauses. There are, but sometimes it's really a good thing.
We don't really have any. I mean, this is not really scripted out. We kind of talk through some ideas and stuff, but usually we never know exactly where it's going.
Yes.
Or how it's going to end.
Which is the conversation format, which is good. And I like that a lot. So hopefully you, the listener, are basically, we want you to respond and just give us your thoughts. And, if you have something you want us to discuss and talk about, this is another good way for us to be able to just share what God is doing with us. And I'll assure you this. We're not reinventing a wheel here. We're not trying to do something different other than to just meet as guys who, I know, and I could speak about JT in this and saying that, JT is, if there's one guy on this earth that I've learned over the year that loves God, it's JT. And it's Johnny sitting across the table from me. And I've always appreciated that about him because for somebody that really lives on faith and you see the faith and the works and all that stuff coming out of him, it's because it's God through him doing it. And
he knows it's God because he knows I messed up on him too. I had this thought today. I was like, if you think your friends are perfect, then they're not very good friends. You don't know.
Oh, man. That's a great thought. That's true, though, isn't it?
But if you think your friends are perfect, you don't know them.
You're not a very good friend if you look at that other person and think, man, they got everything together.
They got it together.
Ooh, man. How many people do that, though?
Tons, because their relationships are surface.
Surface relationships. They don't ever want to go past.
Yeah, they don't want to know. They don't want to know that
the ankle deep water.
They don't want to know what's messed up about that other person. They want to just pretend they're all okay. Which kind of it's somewhat in the direction of our conversation today, but that was just a thought I had today.
That's interesting.
It struck me.
You really don't. You really don't think about that quite a bit. Because I think the friends I've made over the years, whether it be through Lake Forest or through college or through high school or seminary, and I'll tell you, and I'm going to rip seminary a little bit here, and I don't mean to be mean towards seminary people, but I've never connected with maybe one family in seminary in the 3 years that we were there.
Yeah.
And if they hear this, they know who they are. So and we connected with them and really enjoyed their relationship with them because that relationship was born out of relationships that we had from Mississippi and Lake Forest and all those things. And so, and they're still like, I know this, that I could walk in and be stuck in Jackson, Mississippi and call them up and they'd be right there for me.
Yeah.
So there's things like that. That are interesting. I think we often,
I mean, it's funny because I think about it. Mine and your friendship, what makes it such a great friendship is we know that horrible part of it. We know that each other, we're scum of the earth. But we also know that God part of us
right. Mm-hmm. Right.
is pure gold.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
that's not of us. That's of Christ.
That's of many hours of time. We spent time upon time upon time that we sit and talk at Lake Forest Ranch to exhausted time. I mean, I'm talking
sitting in the dining hall at 2
hours
o'clock in the morning.
Hours and hours of conversations of me. I know me fighting and him laughing and and just things we argued.
Only laughing because I'd been there before.
Right. I look back at that time now and think how valuable and how remarkable that time was because of all the things that we did, through those, it shaped my life from that point forward. God used that to shape how I viewed him, how I respond to him, how I basically it went from God being just a certain part of my life to being everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, because used to, I viewed God as this, that my relationship with God was a part of an outline. You know what I'm saying? You've ever seen those illustrations?
Yeah.
Well, God has to be number one in your life. Well, okay, so number one, God. And then I'd have lists. Like I sit down with a friend of ours and made out this list. And of course I had, priorities and things worked out, and literally my priorities were made out of selfish goals, selfish life. I mean, I was looking through my skin outward at that point, having what I thought was a relationship with God that was great. Yeah. So you think about this. It went something like friends, family, girlfriend, God. I can remember this list. And of course, the guy sit down with me, who loved me well. He loved me, had a deep care for me. And he sat me down and says, well, we gotta change it here. We gotta put this up here and reformulate this, and everything goes underneath God right up here. Yeah. And what I didn't see at that point was, he was loving me, but he just didn't understand that made it difficult as well. Yeah. And so I'm coming from that mindset, mind you, meeting JT and having this relationship with JT that was totally unoutline-ish. There was no framework around it. There was nothing that really pulled it together other than we just talked. We had conversations, and finally realizing it was all about God being everything, his whole being my life, living out of his life, not mine. So
all those things on that list weren't under God. They were within God.
Exactly. Those are the important things. Yeah. Is that we try to make these lists and formulas and situations that come out, and it just really messed me up for a long time, but I could see it how it was a good thing overall, because what ended up happening was, I struggled through it. Oh, yeah. I struggled those things, because when you come from that mindset of something is real and true, because I didn't experience real relationships with people probably until 96. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking, I had friends in high school, but they were not those. They were really borderline, ankle deep friends that nobody. I mean, I had one friend in high school that I really knew really well, and that's because we were together every day. Yeah, and that was the one person in high school. But just as far as knowing another person and enjoying the God in another person, and all those things, and probably until because in 96 I met a lot of people that really, including my wife during that time, that was just a total different world as far as relationships go, and really having a different perspective about God for my life. And so, I don't know, that kind of makes sense now,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. So if you're making a list and you're putting God, in a formula, don't do that. Just put the God in the circle or whatever, and put God, and everything comes through him. It's all out of him. It's, that makes so much more sense, and it's so much more easier to live life like that. Anyway. My rant. I'm get off my box here. Sorry.
Well, that was actually
step down.
You think about it, it's actually down the road. Exactly.
It's kind of where we're going.
Where we were going anyway. So
I don't know, JT. You got me on a tangent. You got me rolling my thoughts.
Those are always good, though. Mm-hmm. That's that bubbling. What makes you bubble on the inside? Get you excited.
We'd like to hear that from you guys who are listening. What makes you excited on the inside? What are you bubbling about?
I'm sitting here and I'm just contemplating whether we should go down the road we went down a while ago.
Let's just go down and see what happens.
Oh, how to go down that road without...
Where do we start?
We were kind of laughing about what we were saying, but at the same time, it's extremely serious. What we had started out talking earlier, and something I'd mentioned to Jason yesterday, was just that And we talk about things bubbling on the inside, and we automatically label that, well, that's got to be something spiritual if God's doing it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But if God is in everything we're doing, this is not about a on again, off again
Right.
intimate relationship. It
Right.
wouldn't be intimate if it was on again, off again.
Right.
This is about a relationship that intertwines everything about us.
Right.
How we're made, the things we enjoy. God made us who we are as part of that relationship.
Right. Exactly.
A lot of that's perverted in the flesh, but it's the base of it is who God wanted us to be,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Your love of baseball and sports.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of who God made you.
Right.
It wasn't just an accident that happened because of your upbringing.
Exactly right.
It was part of who He made you. I love photography.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's amazing. One of the things I can do if I really need to relax is I can go out and take nature photography photos.
Mm-hmm.
That will just totally draw my mind
Right.
away from everything
Right.
and get it focused, and my nerves will calm down, which I probably need to do today after last week. But it's all about that relationship.
Right.
We were kind of looking for an illustration earlier, and we've talked about how we divide our lives up into spiritual and everyday.
Right.
We have these two categories.
Yes.
Some things are spiritual, and some things are just
not.
everyday
Right.
life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine this. How would a man and a woman married, how would their relationship work if they divided only one little section of their relationship as their relationship?
Right. If they only saw one part of it as the
relationship, and everything else
Right.
was separate.
Right.
We would think that was foolish to say that,
Right.
and yet we do it spiritually all the time.
Right. And I guarantee you there are people who are married who do that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right.
There's people who do
But
that.
this is why it's a good illustration.
The only thing we came up with that we thought really fit,
It's a typical, but it's good though.
and it makes sense to me because of a lot of the way people go about spiritual stuff, how they think of spiritual stuff.
Right.
And the only illustration we came up with was, what if the man and the woman married in this relationship, the only part they thought was the relationship was sex.
Right. That's it.
And that was the relationship. Everything else has nothing to do with the relationship.
Yeah. Everything else is a sidebar
Yeah, it's stuff you just had to do because
of it.
that's
yeah.
what you have to do every day.
Right. Right.
It has nothing to do with your marriage relationship. Only the sex. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
How awful would that be? Although that's how some people approach marriage.
Right. It's what it does is it meets only a physical need, and it never hits to the core of a person
No.
and who they really are. And that's the problem, because, you feel like, if I only, like I said, if I only saw my wife as that was the most important thing, and that was it, and that was all other relationship was based around, we would hate each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we would literally hate each other.
Or you wouldn't have a relationship if you thought that was it.
Right.
It wouldn't be an intimate relationship.
No, it wouldn't. You wouldn't. I mean, I would have only a marginal knowing of that person.
Right.
It'd be totally different.
But why do we look at our spiritual relationship with God that way so much? And I don't think we think about it that way, but you see it every day.
It's almost like we want this certain thing from God, and that's it. Like we're looking for this, we're looking for the one thing that will satisfy us and not living life totally out of Him, but just in that one area. I just need this. I just need this and need this, or go into this.
Or we think that's what He wants.
Right.
Which is even a scarier thought.
You compartmentalize the whole idea about who God is.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So He wants you to do all these things.
Right.
Wants you to come
List of
worship
rules.
here.
Right.
Wants you to be a certain way.
Right.
And that's how we think of it.
Right.
And their marriage relationships out there that work that way.
Right.
Now.
My thoughts in thinking about this, we talked about this a little earlier tonight too. Just how many churchgoers, just basic, those people who are not going for, even, it doesn't matter what you're going for. Let's just chunk that all out just for a second. But if your relationship with God is just a matter of walking through the door and listening and being a part and that's all you're getting out of it, it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
You're looking for that one instant satisfaction, high peak moment in your relationship. And then all of a sudden it's just like, that's all we focus on. I wish I could wrap my hand on a number and just almost say there's a percentage of the church that are just going in and they're missing out on this whole idea about God and who he is. And they're missing life. They're missing it.
They think there's nothing wrong with 30 minutes of exclusive time with God in the morning or a quiet time, whatever you want.
Right.
But when it's, okay, that was my spiritual time of the day. And now I'm moving on to, hopefully that got me prepared to move on to the rest of the day. And I won't let this old flesh get out and get the better of me all day. Because I did my spiritual stuff this morning. And that just put me in the right frame of mind, and that's just a part of the relationship. The craziness of the day.
Right.
The person in your face that's driving you absolutely up the wall is a part of that relationship.
Right. Right.
Whatever's happening is a part of that relationship.
Exactly.
Because God has it all in control. He puts whatever's there as part of the relationship.
Right.
There's nothing separate from it.
Right.
And we're missing it. There's no wonder we don't think our relationship's working right. It's because we're leaving most of it out.
Right. Right.
We're ignoring most of it as being our relationship with God.
It's
what if you ignored your kids being part of your relationship with Kathy?
Exactly.
How would that work?
It would be terrible.
On the days when all the kids are screaming and everybody's out of sorts.
Which is a lot. But you would miss out. I mean, there's tender moments in those times.
Always.
Tender moments.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's the little things. It's the wrapping up and consoling and comforting, but it's also, impartating, if one of my kids does something wrong in the midst of the haze and I'm getting on to them, the other day, for example, I got on to Lucy. I got on to her good. She did something wrong. All right. Well, she kind of puffed up and walked away and, was a little upset at me and just totally ignored me for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But before bed that night, she was right there in my arms on the couch.
Yep.
And embraced me and let me rub her hair till she fell asleep. But earlier in the day, man, I just totally ruined her life.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, even Lucy, who's about to enter kindergarten, has an understanding of this, that my relationship with her is more than just a disciplinarian father. And that's what it is.
Yeah.
She knows I love her.
Yeah.
But she knows I care about her. She knows I have her best interests in mind, even at 6 years old. She's about to turn 6. She's 5, about to turn 6. So, that's, and if my whole relationship with Lucy was just getting on to her, and having, her aspect and view of me would be horrible.
Yeah.
It would be, she would hate me.
I just think, we get into a day and something goes wrong.
Right.
And we look at it as our failure rather than looking at it as part of our relationship.
Right.
Because a lot of the times when we fail, it's when God is wanting to be God through us.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of our failure, in our weakness, he's made strong.
Right.
That verse carries a lot of weight.
2 Corinthians 12. Yep.
So sometimes he makes us weak so he can be strong.
Right.
And that's part of that. And when we see that, and when we stop ignoring that this is always about the relationship, and we quit looking at our mess and our weakness,
That's good. Mm-hmm.
it's very likely that God's strength is showing up there somewhere.
Right.
We don't feel it necessarily, but if we look, a lot of the times we can see it.
Right. That's an interesting point because.
But that's the thing that makes me so sad, because we're missing out
Right.
on so much of our relationship, and it's why our relationship doesn't seem to work.
Right. That's so good, man.
It takes the whole.
It takes the whole. That's my thought. That was the whole. I mean, I was thinking, you just can't have part of that picture. It's the whole thing. I can promise you, in the conversations I've had over the years with people, with kids, with students, with JT, my wife, I mean, anybody that we've had relationships with, it all comes back to the aspect of enjoying God as who he is in us, the full nature of who he is in us and through us. I couldn't live without him.
No.
With that whole scenario, and living out of his life, being because I'm thinking of times, I know that I've compartmentalized who he is. I put him in my box, and I made him this special person, and I've taken this out that I don't like, and all these kind of things that go on in that, and he got a good Jason God box, and that's kind of what we do in that whole thing, is that compartmentalize, and I don't know. It's almost like, and I really want to say this, and I want to be totally careful how I say it, but it's, people will take their relationship with God and only focus on the disciplinary side of who God is. Yeah. And look, and the wrath of God, his all these things that he does, he disciplines as a father would discipline his son. We talk about all those things, but we look at those things as being the only part of who God is, and we miss out on the whole part. Those are part of his perfections, because those things are just as equal as his love, as his grace, as all those things that is wrapped up in who he is and his attributes. And those are a part of that relationship, but we miss out that through all those things, he is loving us. He cares for us. He actually likes us in the midst of all that. Yeah. And we miss out on that part of the relationship because we're not interested in a God who likes us. Yeah. We're interested in and don't get me wrong, because I'm just as fearful of God as I've ever been, but it's healthy. Yeah. It's a son to a father. But also it's not a scary thing for me. No.
Your kids aren't scared of you.
No.
Even though you spank them.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a scary situation for them.
Because ultimately they know that you do it because you love them.
Right.
It's so hard to even put it into words. Because I was just thinking, because we think God we compartmentalize stuff, and because we think God's that way, well, this is spiritual, this is not, then we only start doing the things which seem to work over here. Mm-hmm. And we begin to think, hey, this relationship's only about sex.
Right. That's it.
Yeah. And that's why so many marriages fail. Mm-hmm. Is because they put things in compartments, and well, this is not really part of that relationship. Right. No, that's part of that relationship too.
Right.
Struggles, everything. But just the missing out
on the fullness of who God is.
The fullness says what's the scripture about the fullness? We have been filled with the fullness of God.
Oh, that's John. John chapter 1. Let me go there. Let's see here. It's in the New Testament, Jason. Sorry. John chapter 1. Yeah, it's a pretty clear verse. I want to say 1:14. No, that's become the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Let's see.
Let me run a search in eSword here.
No, this is the good thing. This is why Scripture is important to us. This is why our relationship with God is important to us. Is that there are things I remember, and I don't always remember how and where to get there. It's the word.
Ephesians 3:19.
Ephesians 3:19. It's John 1:16. Is the other one because I found it.
Okay.
Read Ephesians 3:19.
It says, to know the love of Christ which passes knowledge, that we may be filled with all the fullness of God. When we recognize who He is,
Right.
filled with all the fullness. And what's the John?
John 1:16 is, and of His fullness we have all received in grace for grace. And of His fullness, pleroma, having been filled of all, not just a part.
We have, it's there.
It's the
But
whole thing.
We ignore
Right.
a major portion of it because we divide out the spiritual into everyday.
Right.
Now, the fullness of God is constant.
It never ends.
Never ends.
You're never going to be away from the fullness of God.
No. Can't run from it.
No. Often we try.
Oh, yeah. We want to a lot of the time.
To, but there's nothing.
That's because we don't see Him as who He is.
Right. Right. We miss out.
Anytime we want to run, we can bet we're not looking at God correctly.
That's interesting. And of His fullness, we have received. That's it. That's pretty simply said.
Yep.
Pretty plain. I hate the fact that this is silly, but I hate the fact that we always like it a certain way. And it's one of those things where, yeah, I just can't go there. It just, it all boils down to the fact that we want to get punched in the face. We want to get beat up. We want to and I think we miss the whole idea behind this relationship and intimacy with God because, man, we have received the fullness of who He is. And a part of that is, man, it's not just the inch water that he's wanting to give. He's pouring the vat out. And I always think
it's not the 1 hour on Sunday morning.
Exactly.
It's not listening to a 30-minute podcast.
Right.
It's every minute, every second of every day.
Yeah.
The ordinary is not the ordinary. The ordinary is the spiritual. The extraordinary is the spiritual. The supernatural is the spiritual. Every bit of it.
Right. Living life out of Christ in every part of your life, every aspect, exactly like you're saying. That's life.
Yeah. And that's the only thing that makes relationship work. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it looks like.
Right.
It's the only thing that makes it work.
And I think once you understand and see and you live in that, you're going to understand what it means to have Christ as everything, as Lord of your life, as everything, who He is. Total, what's the word I'm looking for? Total control. He has total control of everything. We rest in Him. Being dependent upon Him, everything. He's it.
Yeah. I was just thinking, we're always searching for what we think is perfect.
Right.
When everything is perfect. The grass is greener.
You just don't see it.
The grass is greener.
You just can't grasp at it and keep pulling at it. You miss it.
You miss it.
Yeah.
You miss life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the old quote? Life is what happens while we're trying to make other plans.
Right. Oh, man. Well, that turned out a lot less damaging than I thought.
God took our scattered thoughts and I think kind of put them into a coherent mess. Oh, but it's just all God.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it.
All right.
So, here's what I'd like to leave you guys with. Just remember, and this may be for, this is I don't know, it's an insider, but it makes sense, from Psalms 103. What's the verse? 14?
Let's see. Gotta go find it again.
Read those verses that lead up to that verse. I can't remember the ones you laid out because
He knoweth, 103:14.
Okay.
Says, for he knoweth our frame, he remembereth that we are dust.
That we are dust.
And the verses leading up to that, you need to go read them.
Yes. Good stuff.
We're not going to read them for you.
They are, in some versions, you might say that we are butt dust.
Yeah.
But
Which would also be correct. Good description. We borrowed that from our friend Steve Miller.
Steve Miller, if you're listening, thank you. So, if JT gets his car fixed, we may be,
It might be a week
or so out.
I might skip a week. So,
okay.
Because I need to travel to Mississippi and visit family that I haven't seen in 6 months.
Yep.
So.
So we'll get back and have this podcast train on the roll. Thank you for listening. This is Coffee and Conversations.
Have a great week.